Hey guys, Justin with Aviate Life. When I got back into the it was just really overwhelming, and I have a list of things that I wanted to give you that might help you when you're, maybe haven't flown in a long time. Now for me, it had been about 13 years, but I came from the airlines. I left the airlines, retired, and have not flown since then. And it was just really overwhelming to get back into it, because what I realized was I'm not getting back into the airlines. Really what I'm getting back into is VFR flying, which had been over 20 years. And just even looking at a VFR sectional was confusing to me. So here's a list of 5 things that I realized that, I wanted to make some notes and pass them along to you if you're getting back into aviation, or pass this on to somebody who is. The first is fly with a friend. Really just going up, sitting in an airplane, and remembering that I used to do this. These things aren't foreign to me. I used to know what all these are. And I think what you're going to find is that it's not foreign to you. You're going to remember that, right, airspeed indicator, and you've got an attitude indicator, and heading, and your vertical speed. Like, these aren't overwhelming things. If you've had your private pilot license, or even like if you're just working on it and want to get back towards completing your private pilot's license, it's not that overwhelming if you sit down in an airplane and just refresh your memory with all of those things that you once knew. So the first time I went out, a friend of ours invited me to sit in a high performance complex airplane. And I was sitting in the right seat, which, as a CFI, I've got a lot of flight time in the right seat. I have a lot of flight time in the right seat of an Embraer as well, but we had instruments in front, and if you sit in the 172, you don't have that. And so in a high performance airplane, we sat there, and I wasn't staring at the instruments, but I was listening to the controller. We shot some practice approaches in VFR, and I was just remembering, oh yeah, this is how you say this. This is what comes next. I'm expecting, we're gonna call up ATIS, and one of the things we're looking for is the altimeter setting. So we're gonna dial in that barometric pressure. And so we did that, and then it was a long time after that, actually, that John invited me to go up with him. And, we were flying around, and again, now we're in a small airplane, and so those things will come back to you. Number 2 is YouTube. Now, you're probably watching this on YouTube. YouTube has some amazing content. It can be overwhelming, though. I didn't follow a lot of aviation content, so I didn't know necessarily, what to search for or where to go. But there's some really good content when you start searching for like Rusty Pilot, or I haven't flown in a while. When you get into, if you're going back into refreshing yourself on the instrument side of like flying an IFR, if you've got an instrument rating, there's some really good channels with like the procedures, and trust me, it will come back to you. Don't be overwhelmed. Number 3 is online courses. This was a big favorite of mine. When I wanted to get back into an airplane, I rejoined AOPA, which I was a member of more than 20 years ago. And there's great it for just refresher. One of the things you're going to want to look for is the Rusty Pilots course with AOPA. It's free to all members, and it will take you through those things that you're like, where do I start? It will take you through that. It's an amazing course. It's compatible on your phone, on an iPad or tablet, and on your computer. So go through that. Sporties has some amazing ground school courses. Now, most of these are geared towards a rating or a license or something like that. So if you're starting with your private, or you're getting an instrument rating, you're working on a commercial. I just finished the tail wheel. So getting back into that. Now again, it's been since the late 90s since I've flown a tail wheel. So I have some hours and my tail wheel endorsement, but I wanted to get a refresher before I go back to working with an instructor. So it's not just, wait, how does all this work? Like, it's all laid out in the course. Patty Wagstaff teaches this one on Sporties, and it's amazing. And I'm also working my way back through the instrument rating, the ground school, and finding it to be so incredibly helpful. I'm learning, again, it's been 13 years since I've done this, but this is my world. And as I'm going through this instrument stuff in the ground school, I'm finding, yes, I remember that. I remember, what is that? Very few things where I'm saying, what is that? And so again, another example of a good online course that you can take. And the third one that I would mention with online courses is the FAA Wings program. Now, the FAA isn't known for making extremely compelling content, but the Rusty Pilots course that I mentioned will get you credit towards the Wings program. And again, things that you can bring to an instructor as you get back into it, which I'm going to mention later. Fourth is the flight simulator. So now when I say flight simulator, I think a lot of things come to mind. Of course, there's at the top of the scale here is a full motion flight simulator. And that's the most recent thing that I've trained in with the airlines, where you're going to sit down, it feels like you're flying, and you get into like a level D where, you know, it's very, very realistic and it's just like flying the airplane. Really what I want to talk about though is like the low barrier to entry, and that's like a flight training device or even lower than that. A lot of people refer to them as flight simulators, but what we're talking about is like a Microsoft Flight Simulator or an X-Plane. Those are two of the most popular ones on the market right now. I downloaded X-Plane and find that I can fly it with the cursor on the trackpad on my laptop, but I added a joystick to it. So you've got buttons and stuff over there, and really I wanted to take out the distraction of flying the airplane, because in this step you're not trying to practice flying. You're trying to familiarize yourself, just like flying with a friend, these instruments in front of you, what all the stuff does. You want to pull out like an instrument approach, on a ForeFlight or download them and look and just remember, again, you're reminding yourself that you used to do this. And that's what a flight simulator. So look at Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane and remove the distraction. You're not trying to practice flying the airplane. You're trying to refamiliarize yourself. Step number 5, and this is the last step, and it's fly with a CFI. Now, you might remember with your flight review, you only need, the requirement is an hour of ground and an hour in the air. A good CFI is going to give you more of that. And call up, do some interviews with a CFI. As a CFI myself, I would expect people to call me and spend 5 minutes talking, come out and meet me, and let's chat for a little bit. We're not going to charge you for that. A good flight instructor will not. And you're just going to ask them questions and say, hey, this is my story. Would you mind if I told you that? And you can give me some suggestions. And any good CFI is going to say, yeah, how long has it been since you've flown? Gauge your familiarity, and we'll build a program based on what they think you need. And so I got together with a CFI who just off the bat had some really good rapport with. And the very first time we went up in an airplane. There was no ground, there was nothing of that. It was like, hey, let's do a little familiarization, figure out where you are, and then we're going to build a program from there. And I probably spent about 3 hours in the air, and we probably spent about that on the ground. So again, it had been 13 hours or 13 years for me since I've flown. And so this is going to be based on what you need. Maybe it's only been 2 years, but you might only have 80 or 100 hours, and you don't have that memorization of the stuff to go back to. So it's going to take a little bit more time. Maybe it's only been 2 years, but you've got hundreds of hours or thousands of hours, so it might not take you as much time. Those are my 5 tips for getting back into aviation if it's been a while. I'm Justin with Aviate Life, and if you have not received one of these stickers yet, go to aviatelife.com, click on Flight Club, we'll send you one, it's completely free.